Hey, hello, welcome back. We're now in the last week of June. I'm here for,
That's how it feels.
we are here from Astrological Kairos, and I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. And with me is Christa from practicalastros.com. Hi, Christa.
Hi.
Hi. And together we're going to be looking at the 25th of June to the 2nd of July, closing out the month. So here is our calendar. And we're going to start with the new moon in Cancer, which is happening straight away, jumping straight in. And then we've got Mercury entering Leo into the sign of the lion. And then Mercury has a bit of a shock. He goes into Leo and straight away he's opposite Pluto. So we've only got 3. We get some weeks like that. Some weeks I'm doubling up and worrying about which ones to include. And some weeks there's just 3 to look at. How does this week look to you, Christa?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be Mercury is usually the pioneer as far as aspects because it moves so quickly. The moon moves fastest, but when Mercury kind of enters a new sign, usually it acts as that herald of heralding the new aspects that the other personal planets, the Sun and Venus and Mars, moving through. You know, Mars is in Virgo at this point. Mars is past that, but Mercury opposing Pluto kind of is heralding this new opposition that the Sun will then experience when it gets into Leo. So a lot of times having something like Mercury in Leo kind of sets the stage of like, okay, what is this going to be about? You know, opposing that Pluto in Aquarius. We've had Pluto in Aquarius for a while. It's retrograding, but it won't retrograde back into Capricorn. It's definitely in Aquarius at this point. So I don't think it'll necessarily be anything new, but opposition is kind of like that tension point, and that's how we end the month. We spent the month talking about Jupiter in Cancer, the Sun in Gemini, but this week it's really the Sun is fully into Cancer. We're looking at the new moon, but then also just that tension of the Leo Aquarius houses. So I don't know how I feel about it yet. I love new moons, and we'll just have had that cazimi with the Sun and Jupiter a few days before. So this new moon, it feels kind of like a continuation of that cazimi story.
Yeah, it really does. It just feels like Lunar and Mercurial this week. Very solar week last week, and it's like we're working our way through the planets.
Yeah. Mercury and the moon are so much about the mind. So maybe this will be more of like a quick mental, intellectual, or emotional and intellectual week, you know?
Yeah. That new moon in Cancer, the lunar, the home of the moon. And of course, the new moon is very lunar. The moon goes dark. So our thoughts go internal. So it's a very private, personal new moon. And then Mercury in Leo in the Sun's place is external. Our thoughts turning outwards. And then again, opposite Pluto, more about the shadows. But Pluto in Aquarius is about the collective. So interesting opposition there.
Yeah, just these 3 aspects. If we think of a dark moon, the moon and the Sun are together. And so the Sun outshines the moon. You can't see the moon. So it's this moment where the moon is hidden from us, and new moon as like a seed planting moment. You know, you don't see the fruit on the day that you plant the seed. The seed planting is kind of that intention setting with the promise to nurture whatever seed has been planted. But then the next day for Mercury to go into Leo, which is a loud, fiery, expressive solar sign, it's almost like if we have a really good intentional moment in the new moon in Cancer, the next day we want to shout about it. And then shouting about it, through the Leo house, maybe it brings some opposition or counter argument from the Aquarius house of like, you said you had this idea, but I'm going to challenge and challenge you to see that I disagree with it, or I don't think you can do it, or I just want to argue. That oppositional nature, it feels like it kind of is related to that new moon. A Cancer can't see the Aquarius house or the Leo house. So it's almost like the intention that you set in Cancer might immediately be shown through the Leo Aquarius house in a way that maybe is unexpected. But I love a new moon. The moon is at home in Cancer, like you said. It's co-present with Jupiter, exalted there. It's co-present with Mercury because Mercury won't leave until the next day. So it feels like an extra chatty Cancer new moon for this. And I feel like we might want to just share whatever that new moon intention is with Mercury entering into Leo.
That's really nice. It's nice to look at the week that way, about how it flows, especially when it's a lunar way and a Cancer moon. So here we are with the Nicola Allen's beautiful Wild Way Oracle card of these lovely dolphins swimming in this cycle, in this little circle that they have going. And the decan is Venus and Moon ruled. So we're still in this nurturing place, this nourishing place. And these are the keywords: nourishment, intimacy, and enmeshment. And it's really about this relationship between the two. And it's called give and take, which just seems really nice. So we're in the first decan of Cancer. This is happening on the 25th of June, and it's at 1:31 British Standard Time overnight. So it would be 12:31 midnight, half past midnight Universal Time. So just that it would be the day before, probably the 4th of June in America.
Yeah, I like the Mars at 4 degrees is also kind of still in that sextile to the new moon and close to Jupiter. Both Jupiter, the sun, and the moon are still square to Neptune and Saturn, but past it. So hopefully that tension is lessening a little bit. There's also Mercury is sextile Uranus. I like Uranus, Mercury connections. So much of this just feels like kind of like the mind. What do we think? How do we think? How do we communicate that? That expression will maybe be given a bit louder of a voice once it goes into Leo, but just there's some sort of story weaving, maybe just under the surface, undulating kind of like those dolphins. And how do we weave the words together? The connection with Uranus there really does feel like we have that spark of the mind with the new moon and past the burdens of that Saturn-Neptune square over there in Aries.
Yeah, it's nice to get that fresh start when you're past those difficult hurdles, and then you get into this watery place and you can just sit there with Jupiter and just connect a little bit. We've got Austin Coppock calls this decan mother and child, and Kira Ryberg calls it connection. And you've mentioned before that the tarot for this decan is the Two of Cups, and it is just this celebration moment of those two women toasting each other with those two cups, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's that nice moment. And the narrative for this card is that we get this delightful scene of love, care, companionship, where intimacy and nurturing are highlighted. And we're asked to contemplate this and to feel into the sense of ease and flow and harmony. And we're reminded that it's possible to create collaborative relationships that are full of care and consideration. And when we see these Cancer 1 dolphins swim by, we're being asked, are my relationships mutually beneficial? Are they supportive? And do they meet my needs? Is there trust, harmony, and mutual respect? And are you looking for a healthy balance of give and take? So it's just to take a little bit of time out and reflect on those questions. And if you see an imbalance as well at this time of the new moon, is there anything you can do to redress that imbalance?
Yeah, because relationships aren't necessarily contractual, or they're not like, I gave you X amount of hours, now you give me X amount of hours. It does fluctuate. And if it does feel like there is an imbalance, to reevaluate it and say, I don't care that you always do the dishes. You never do this and it bothers me. So can we take turns and can we change it up so that it doesn't bother me anymore? It doesn't have to be, it's actually as calculated, because Cancer is flowy, but it is emotional. It is watery, and there is kind of like the emotional toll that things can take if there is an imbalance. Of like, it bothers me that I always have to call you. Can you call me sometimes just so I feel like you're thinking of me before I think of you? I mean, it's like kind of having that, or, writing out a letter of complaint and never giving it to the person, but just getting it out, just like releasing that emotion so that you can kind of give it out, and maybe just saying it out loud once is all that you needed to kind of release it. Because new moons, I feel like they're a good time for seed planting, but they're also a good time to let go of what maybe isn't as nurturing or nourishing to the seed that you want planted, like letting go so that you can set the intention.
Yeah, it's like that last chance of if you're going into a new cycle and you don't want to take what you should have released in the last cycle with you forwards. Mm-hmm. So it's like the last chance to let what you don't want to carry forward go.
Yeah.
So yeah, when that's drawn to your attention, it's like, no, I'm ready to release that. It really has to go. And
if you think of like moving from one house to another, sometimes it's a pain because you have to pack everything up and move it to the next place. But you also get to go through stuff and let go of things that maybe, if you haven't moved for a long time, you've built up a lot of just energetic stale, stuff. And a new moon is kind of a good time to like do that purge, do that cleanse, do things kind of in the dark of just quietly throwing away, composting, recycling, donating, or repurposing whatever you have, just so you can have the space to then start anew, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, it's because it is a new moon, but both rulers are there in the sign, which is nice. You've got the exaltation ruler and the ruler, the moon, and the sun illuminating it all. So you've got those significations of a new moon, but just you're only going to get that in Cancer, aren't you, really?
Yeah.
It's the only sign the moon rules. Just so.
I mean, you would have it like if it was a new moon in Taurus with Jupiter there, but it's especially more true because Jupiter exalts here and the moon is at home. And just real quickly, so if you're Cancer rising, this is the first house for you. And so this can be just like a seed planting of like intentions that you have for yourself, I mean, that the cardinal risings really get this in the angular houses. So it might feel a little bit louder. It's a good chance to kind of get this going. It's different from the other houses, but if you put Cancer, if you look at your Cancer house and see kind of what you want to see grow there, I feel like there's some good blessings. There's the benefit of having both benefics in relation to it, because Taurus is sextile Cancer. It's, past the exact sextile. Venus is past that, but it's still viewing upon it. And so look at the Cancer house. Where does that fall in your own natal chart? And what seed do you want to commit to nourishing for the next few months, for the next year, and see what you can grow there? I think it's a good time to kind of make it happen. You've got the benefics, both kind of giving their blessing to the Cancer here.
Yeah, absolutely. And those cardinals are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. It's the people that are really getting this loudness of this Cancer. This can be about intimacy and nourishment, as we said, like with
enmeshment.
Yeah, enmeshment. And that can be too much as well, especially with Jupiter there. Like, be careful of the enmeshment. Like Christa said, you don't have to keep score, and certainly be aware when you're enmeshing with someone, you don't want to become devouring. That can be the shadow side of Cancer, the devouringness and the need that then tips over into control. That's what you need to be wary of. That's the danger, that controlling, that all-devouring mother archetype that Cancer can signify is the shadow. So that's the thing to be wary of as Jupiter transits through.
It's a new moon in Cancer.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, beautiful day. It is Mercury's day. Kind of looking at that. The lunation is happening in the bounds of Mars. So we look at Mars's rule. Mars is in Mercury's temple and in Mercury's bound. And so it feels like the idea of communicating or writing it down using Mercurial, martial Mercurial things does feel like a kind of a good practice.
That's really nice. Yeah, really like that. Yeah, that just that idea of getting things down in a letter, and like you were saying about that, not keeping score, but maybe just that when they say about communicating and saying, I feel, if something is making you feel uncomfortable or unappreciated or something, it's still important to verbalize it or write it down or communicate it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's adding up over time, and not letting it fester, the give and take, even if it's not 100% equal, that you feel that there is balance somehow. Even if it's not strictly hours somebody puts in, or the tasks aren't split 100% down the middle, or whatever it is, however it works for you. But as long as it does work for you and that you feel that it's fair, that's what's important. And if you don't, now is the time that you take a step back, reflect on that, and see what you need to do to redress it and communicate it.
And if you live near a body of water, an ocean, a lake, a stream, a river, taking that letter and like slowly curling it, tearing it into little pieces and throwing it into the water and just letting it go away. Like letting the water kind of release it and letting the words be dissolved by the water, and just like giving it up to the larger primordial waters that we all connect to, I think is a way just to release those words into the wild.
Yes, that's really beautiful. We'll speak it to the water as well, to a pebble.
Scream underwater.
Yes.
Take a bath and scream underwater. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, as Mercury gets to the anoretic degree, the screams might get louder.
Yeah, I've done message in a bottles before at the ocean, but there's something about the water actually touching the words. So just letting it, really letting it go. And, if you're near a body of water, then there might be some sort of sand that you can draw your message in and let the tides kind of let it dissolve away.
I mean, that's so nice with that square separating from Neptune as well, just letting that be dissolved by Neptune. That's so nice. Okay, and then we have
Or a day and a half later, Mercury goes into Leo.
So you've got Mercury going into Leo on the 26th of June, and this is at 8:09 p.m. British Standard Time, so 7:09 in Universal Time. So I think we'd have the same day, would we? It would be possibly overnight for some and early morning for most.
Yeah, I think Australia would experience this on Friday morning, but the rest of like Western Europe and North America would experience this sometime during the day on Thursday, on Jupiter's day, on the 26th. So we have shout it loud, shout it proud with Mercury up there in Leo.
Yeah, Leo quite often is the spotlight or the stage, or really being authentic leadership and purpose and shining our own light with our thoughts and our words. So bringing those through, everything that we've learned in Cancer, the vulnerability. You don't often associate vulnerability with Leo, but it can be there. Or Syncopic's got a decan that's the mask, and this decan can be about that stepping into the spotlight and the need to do that, but even though you're vulnerable, but showing up authentically as well.
To be brave, you're not brave because you start off brave. You're brave because you have worked through your vulnerability and still chosen to do whatever the thing is. So the tarot card with this is the Five of Wands, and it's like you see 5 characters kind of play fighting with their wands. So you're working something out, and it can be playful. It doesn't have to be just discordant. I like this, the antitia between Uranus and Mercury there. There's still that connection point. Uranus is half a degree away of moving into Gemini. Gemini and Cancer have antitia with each other. Leo and Taurus have antitia with each other. And so there is still that Uranian connection to Mercury there moving into Leo. It's square by whole sign, but they have the antitia being so close together, while Mercury is at least within the first 30 minutes of it being in Leo. It has that exact antitia. So I do like that moment. Mercury cannot see Mars. It's in Virgo. It's in Mercury's temple, but it can see the Gemini house. So if you have any Gemini placements, you're now having the ability of that whole sign sextile with Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, now being in Leo. Leo and Gemini have a sextile whole sign relationship to each other. So I love Mercury Leo. It's usually a bit louder than Mercury in Cancer. It's like, coming out of the home and then sharing what's been undulating in the watery nature of home now is being shared through the expressive nature of Leo. It's solar, the sun resides there. There's no other ruler. So it's just solar. And having the Mercury there, it went through a cazimi with the sun and Gemini, and now it's able to express itself fully from that cazimi through the kind of the watery slumber of it being in Cancer, now expressing loudly in Leo before it goes to its sign of exaltation and home of Virgo. So I like this moment of Leo Mercury. I think of Shakespeare in the Park and like public performances of plays, in the summertime, going to see live music, going to see like things that are expressed outside under the sun while the sun is high in the sky in the northern hemisphere. And just the performance of plays feels like Leo Mercury.
It hasn't got sight of either luminary, particularly its ruling luminary, the sun, but the sun will get there. The moon will get there sooner, but it's still an evening star. So it's in the night sect, really ruled by the moon. So I suppose it's more important that the moon gets there.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you move the chart over, as the sun sets, on the descendant, Mercury is visible, right? So you can see Mercury at night. If you have sight, there's no clouds, you don't have trees or mountains in the way like I do, so like having Mercury be in that trickster phase, that night phase, it just feels like it's getting a bit more prominence in the sky. And maybe we'll see that Mercury themes of will have more prominence in our life, that we'll be able to speak louder, speak more clearly, speak with more authority, speak with more attention. Maybe we'll just be paying attention more to the things that we say out loud, which I'm a big fan of, casting spells out loud by just speaking them into existence, saying your truth, being authentic, being that fiery self, even if it causes discord, even in that Five of Wands. You may not like what I'm going to say, but I am going to speak from my authentic self. And that will get attention because it's in Leo and it is fiery and it is loud and it is solar. So be it. Truth has to be said.
Yeah, there's so much power in words. I have to remind friends who speak negatively about themselves to watch their words, because you're repeating that negative self-talk is so damaging.
Yeah.
And to catch those words and to change them, and to be conscious of that negative self-talk and how it can really drag you down. And even if you can't switch it around into positive talk, to at least stop those thoughts and be mindful of repeating them.
Yeah, even just the switch of like, I have to go do this, to changing it to I get to go do this.
Yes. Yeah. Or just not saying it. If you can't change it into something positive, just catching that thought, then or I'm able to go do this.
Exactly. Or I am looking forward to this being done.
It will be done. I get to cross it off my list.
So mote it be.
It just, saying I have to, or I can't do this. If you keep telling yourself you can't do something, you'll be right.
Yeah.
And that's
when I coach Girls on the Run, that phrase, I can't do this, like part of Girls on the Run program is to teach empowerment. And so instead of saying I can't do this, to say I can't do this yet.
Yes.
That's just adding that one little word is like, it gives you hope. Those 3 little letters just give you that little bit of hope to tell yourself, I can't do this yet. But by saying I can't do it yet means that you're telling yourself, like, I'm going to work at being able to do this the best that I can. And maybe I won't ever do it in my life, but I'm going to try. So.
Yeah, it's so different, isn't it? It's such different energy, and those spells that you're casting by saying it as well. You disempower the I can't do it. Because what's your brain to think if you're trying to do something and then you're telling yourself you can't? It's like your brain is muddled before you even start. No wonder you can't do it.
Yeah. Even just like remediation of this, sitting in the sun and writing in the sun, like just taking advantage of the warmth and the sunshine when you can get it, writing things down, writing ideas down, writing that, what you want to express down, and looking at the Leo house. Like for me, I'm Scorpio rising. So Leo is my 10th. How am I seen? How am I seen at work, with what I do for a living? How do I express myself publicly? How do I want to be known? Do I want to be famous or infamous? Like being choosy with the words that I express publicly. If you're, Aries rising, it's the house of pleasure, writing for, or writing about what brings you pleasure, or writing for pleasure. If you're a Taurus rising, this is your 4th house of home, like being at home and communicating with what home means to you, connecting with people that you are related to or that bore you into the world. I mean, if you're Leo rising, it's expressing of self. There's all like Mercury going through all these houses gets to express itself, depending on your natal chart, all the areas of life. Gemini rising, this is your 3rd house of siblings. So it's just, it's going to be expressive in the way that is designed from your natal chart, but collectively we'll experience it, I think, just louder and funnier. I think Mercury in Leo is just funny. It's comical. It wants to shine. It wants to be shiny. It brings up games and sports in a way of, that back and forth, like tennis or pickleball or volleyball. It's like being active and being solar and being outside and bringing up heat. I like that for kind of having a running buddy even, So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. And one good thing, if you've like identified with what we were talking about, the negative self-talk, is maybe to just sit down and write for yourself 1, 2, or maybe 3 things that you say to yourself, and how you could add that word yet, or just change one word in that sentence, and just work on, even if it's just one of them. Work on maybe switching it up and asking Mercury and Leo to help you with that. Yeah. He'd love to help you just step it up, because this is the regal sign, the sign of the king. He wants to embody that, holding your head up high.
Another thing that came up was there are people that say they're sorry a lot, like sorry. It's almost like they use it as a filler word. If you are one of those people, try the practice of just saying surprise instead of sorry. It makes it sometimes kind of uncomfortable. Instead of apologizing, you're like, surprise, but it kind of adds a little bit of play and game, and it gets you out of the habit. If you can replace, while Mercury is in Leo, try to replace those superfluous sorries with superfluous surprise, and it just really lightens the mood, and it reminds you of how often you say sorry. It might take the whole transit to get into the habit, but it is pretty funny. And you can kind of surprise yourself with the mood shift instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, I'm so surprised. It just really like helps like brighten the mood.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been trying that, haven't we? And it's worked quite well. But it's a very British thing. I mean, it is baked into our DNA to just apologise for everything. It's just part of the we apologise for the weather and things like that we've got no control over.
Yep. And we might need that, because it's coming into the opposition with Pluto. It is heralding the sun moving into Leo later this summer, which will also oppose Pluto. And then Jupiter next year, which will oppose Pluto. And Venus will also be moving into Leo, which will oppose Pluto. And so we're looking at these things opposing Pluto, Mars being the one that did it first, but Mercury and Pluto there, what is being unearthed and communicated as such with that opposition. And, I think a lot with the Pluto and Leo generation, kind of having this opposition, maybe Mercury there giving voice to what that tension is, what the boomer generation quintessentially with Pluto and Leo, kind of giving voice to that and giving new life to that and honoring that, and also letting some of that go as Pluto is retrograde. What are we returning to? What do we not need to hold on to anymore? And Mercury kind of giving voice to it.
Because you've still got a Pluto and Leo president, haven't you? And you've had a lot of them, a whole generation of them.
Yeah, a lot of our leaders, globally are of that age. And I think that part of the Saturn and Aries transit is going to be really coming to terms with the gap in age, because that's, to me, like Aries is the young, sprightly child energy, and Saturn is the old man energy. And that tension of how do we reconcile the two? And the Pluto and Aquarius, and then these transits of things going through Leo also kind of echoes that. How do we reconcile honoring both age and experience and authority versus the change that inevitably comes from new, younger perspectives? Personally, our old thoughts, how do we allow those old thoughts to kind of dictate the direction of life? Or how do we change sorries to surprises and really redirect our mood and the words that we use and tell ourselves and express out loud to kind of shift the direction with that opposition? Oppositions are the nature of Saturn, and we get perspective, but sometimes that perspective comes from having a point of tension and things seeming to be opposite each other. But I don't dislike a Mercury aspect to Pluto. I think that it's usually entertaining.
Yeah, but it brings out those shadows and gives voice to them, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And we've got that trine there to Saturn and Neptune as well from Mercury that's informing it, with the moon co-present, bringing those are the two planets that are closest to Earth, so really bringing it through to us, but still no sight of the suns, so they're a little bit unsupervised.
Yeah,
I would say so unexpected things may happen, especially with Mercury in trickster phase. Trickster phase and unsupervised is not necessarily great, and he's facing the shadows, but he's comfortable there because he can travel through the psychopomp phases and go into these dark places. I mean, Pluto is said to be the lord of the underworld. Mercury can travel there, so he's not unfamiliar with Pluto's significations, as he's unearthing like the death, rebirth, struggle of the mind, and how our thoughts can help or impede that sort of process in this struggle. And then we've got Saturn and Neptune, who've been causing all this trouble with the squares, suddenly coming to the rescue. It's like a strange new position for them from Aries, asking, who am I? Helping Mercury in this leadership role, but like newly entered and then newly facing this opposition to Pluto, the old guard.
Yeah, we're getting closer with Venus approaching Uranus, which also feels similar in that. Like, we're not going to have that until the first week of July. But that unearthing, that disruption, that tension of that conjunction there seems to echo also that unearthing, that tension of opposition with Mercury, Pluto, and they're square each other, because it's the fixed signs. And we also have the moon at this moment of exact opposition squaring that Uranus, which is being conjoined with Venus. So it does feel like that the fixed, squares or oppositions of the fixed really do challenge it, because the fixed its design is to hold. And when you have that disruption, that disruptive power of Uranus, the disruptive power of Mercury, the disruptive power of Pluto, kind of really shaking things up, it can feel more consequential, because once it does kind of, if you think of the tower card is Mars, and the tower kind of breaks things down that have built up too far. There are barnacles along like the support network of a dock. And when you have barnacles just growing and growing and growing, it can kind of really soften the wood of that support beam of a dock, and it can just be destroyed. So by like chipping those barnacles off, it can cause pain, or just the energetic or theoretic barnacles. Letting things kind of chip away and break down and fall down is actually best for the structure. And having those fixed be there, it feels very like a good tower moment of letting things crumble away so that you can actually have a healthier foundation after the fact. The aftermath will be better for us because there is that disruption and excavating things that need to either fall away or be reintroduced.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to explain it. And they're likely to be longer lasting. This fixed nature is more likely to sustain whatever comes in to take its place, to be long lasting. But we may need to wait to see what that would be, maybe when the sun enters Leo.
Yeah, we'll have that towards the end of July, so probably like a month from now. The moon will hit it before then. But this moment, because of the moon's relationship to Uranus with Venus approaching, because the squares that Jupiter and Saturn have just had with Jupiter and the Sun have just had with Neptune and Saturn, this opposition is kind of like, well, now let's add this to the mix, because like while we're overcoming these other squares, I've got another thing to bring up, and Mercury at least gives voice to those things.
Yeah, it brings it into the public arena. Aquarius is very public, and so is Leo. It certainly brings it to everyone's attention, and the moon representing the people. Everyone's aware that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, I mean, if we think of Leo just as like the singular light, like the light shines on me, and the Aquarius is like the light shines on everybody. It's like, what are we shining the light on? Or what are we communicating that we want the light to be shown on, so that when the sun does go into Leo and the sun is at home opposing that, we've already communicated what we think, what is our individual banner and what is our collective banner. And there's just something about the retrograde Pluto. It's like, it may not be something brand new. It may be something like, you know what? I have wanted to say that for a year. It's nothing surprising. Maybe it's like we turn surprise into sorry. Like, sorry, it took me a whole year to bring voice to this. And I don't feel like it's going to be something brand new. I feel like it's going to be something that we all kind of recognize is like, yeah, we have needed to address this for a while.
Yeah.
So such a happy note to end June on.
I'm sure we haven't got a nice benefic signature. Well, we kind of have. We've got a whole sign sextile still between these benefics. So there's that support still.
Yeah, and it sets us up for, there's no other real big transit days that we're going to talk about for this week, so we'll be kind of ending the week, maybe in the aftermath of really understanding and integrating, these disruptions. We kind of started the month off this way we started with what Venus conjoined Chiron, and now we're ending with Venus approaching Uranus. So it's been kind of, something doesn't always have to be happening every day. I feel like we'll end the rest of this week with kind of thinking back and addressing all of this square energy and oppositional energy and writing about it. Maybe just spend the rest of the week, the Sunday through Wednesday, thinking about how do I want to express all of this stuff that's been happening? Because I feel like we'll have enough to talk about, enough to write about, which actually reminds me, if you know Substack, I just want to plug Substack as a place to meet and talk. Even if you don't ever write like posts, you can just write notes. You can use it kind of as like a Twitter feed or a Blue Sky feed. You don't have to have any like big articles that you write. It's there if you want to do long form. But I like Substack just for the interactive social media aspect of it. I feel like it's a really great place to kind of express communication. I think it's a good Leo Mercury place. So if you don't have a Substack, it's free. I would sign up because I just feel like it's just a much nicer place to hang out as opposed to all the other ones. You can put, videos and images like Instagram, but it's really there for writers. And if you have thoughts that you write down, then congratulations, you're a writer. It doesn't have to be for a professional writer. I'm not a professional writer, and I love spending time on there. So I feel like maybe that's, if you needed a sign to join another social media platform, then here it is, Leo, Mercury, go sign up for Substack, because I think it's just a really nice place to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's just that more community vibe, isn't there? That Jupiter in Cancer. It's a Jupiter in Cancer place and a Mercury in Leo place.
Yeah. And I just, for some reason, feel less guilty when I'm on my phone reading Substack than I do if I'm on my phone looking at Instagram or Blue Sky or just even reading the news. For some reason, Substack just feels like a different space altogether. They didn't pay me to say that. I just was prompted to.
I've got plenty of followers who, like, I usually will look to follow back or subscribe back. And when I look, they're not sharing, they're not writing themselves, but they just follow people and occasionally post notes of their own. So there's plenty of people that do that, who maybe will, sometimes they do a watch this space that they're going to write at some point. And, whether you do or you don't, but you can still be on there and follow your favourite writers or editors. And we're both on there. And so are the rest of our Ask Ladies. We haven't got Mandy Ray on there yet, but we'll get her on there
soon enough. Mandy, this is your sign. Yeah. What's the word that's come up for you?
I was thinking of something along the lines of that integration, like alchemizing it with the Mercury and Leo and the opposition.
Yeah, the Temperance card, like it has the angel with the two cups that is like kind of blending the two things together. That feels kind of enmeshing, like kind of bridging worlds, integrating ideas, or bringing the expression out from the Cancer lunar world to the solar. Yeah, so there's something about the expression of bridging. Bridging.
Yeah, because maybe we're stepping into a new place as well. That sextile starts forming.
Just telling your story. And that's what it is. Just
what's your favorite out of those?
I mean, the word expression just keeps coming up, and you're expressing something. You're expressing your experience or your integration. I like integration too, but integration doesn't necessarily mean sharing it. It's like you're weaving it together. Yeah. So I just like expression.
For an emoji.
Jazz hands.
And here, Mercury's in Leo. So cool. Okay. So thank you, Christa from Practical Astros. And Astrological Kairos will be back in July, but we're switching things up a little bit. Maybe some changes because Christa is stepping in, thankfully. It's exam time and my website is under revision. So I'm going to be taking a break, and just to honour my 12th house month, and Astro Weekly Update is having a 12th house month as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Christa. You're stepping in with Shauna and covering July.
Yeah. Yeah. Sonia will be back after her sabbatical, her well-deserved sabbatical. Shauna and I will make something up. We don't know exactly what, but we'll be here talking about each week following Sonia's format. Thanks for holding the space for as long as you did. And we'll come up with something just to talk about the transits for each week, just like we've done before, but it might look or sound a little different for the month, but that's fine. This is a collective.
Yeah. And if there's any changes you'd like to see, do let us know, because this is a great time while you take a bit of time out. It's a good time to reflect and make some changes. So if there's something you'd like us to add, something you'd like us to take away, do let us know.
Yeah. We may or may not listen to it.
Yeah, no promises, but we're interested in your thoughts. But do like, subscribe, comment, do the emoji, the jazz hands. If you're having expression this week, we'd love to hear how it's playing out for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.